everyone. As you know, for Module 3, we have 2 readings. So we have a reading from the Nelson textbook, and also we have our first reading from the Hara and Murray textbook. So I asked you to read Chapter 1, and I'm going to briefly go over the main points from this chapter. So Chapter 1 was the multidimensional foundations of methods for culturally and linguistically diverse students. We're also referring to these students as CLD students. So I encourage you to know the frequently used terms and acronyms. So there are quite a few of them. If you want to make note cards, that might be beneficial, or at least write them down so you can have reference points when reading through your textbook. On slide 3, there are also a few more common acronyms for ESL and EFL education. So CLD, like I said, is culturally and linguistically diverse. And what this is it's students whose culture or language is different from other grade level students. And in the text, there's different perspectives. And as being an educator, we would take the asset perspective, meaning that these students bring rich experiences to our classrooms. So with that, different languages, they have experiences and schoolings in another country, and also they're familiar with multiple cultures and ethnicities. So with that, we want to be affirmative in recognizing and celebrating the advantages, talents, and experiences the student brings to the classroom and to the school. So educators should recognize and use cultural and linguistic diversity as a powerful enrichment of a school's learning community. Also within this is equity, which is the recognition that each student is unique and that his or her access to a high quality education is dependent upon 4 things: the resources, instructional methods, curricular opportunities, and more that are responsive to his or her different assets or needs. Moving on, we're going to look at the PRISM model. And what this is there are 4 dimensions of the model. So there's linguistic, academic, cognitive, and sociocultural. And there's an integration of students' heritage, culture, family interaction, and more within the sociocultural component. So I have a nice visual for you included on this slide. So it's important to remember that the 4 dimensions are interrelated and involve developmental processes that occur simultaneously for the CLD student. So none of those dimensions should be addressed in isolation. This PRISM model is a product of long-term, multi-age, and multi-site research and analysis. And also, it's a holistic way to frame the differential learning and transition needs and diverse assets that CLD students bring to our school. So there are some sociocultural challenges that these students face. So the cultural component is the CLD student must adjust to a new country, a site, or a neighborhood. The CLD student must adapt to a new education system, and the student must cope with the nuisances of a school culture. There's also some psychosocial elements and challenges. This dimension encompasses the complex social and cultural factors and variables that are critical to the transitional adjustments and the academic successes of the CLD student. So moving forward, the cultural challenges of the sociocultural dimension is that a school's culture encompasses at least 3 salient elements, and that is the attitudes and beliefs of members, the norms and rules to which members adhere, and the relationships that exist among its members. And with that being said, there are 4 counterproductive influences associated with rigid, entrenched school cultures. And that is 1, a strict focus on norms and rule systems. 2, a strong emphasis on conforming to those rules. 3, a distinct self-conscious about the image of the school. And 4, pervasive scapegoating. And I encourage you to read in depth about those in the chapter. So our last slide here is very important and is somewhat the essence of this chapter. So it's the sociocultural processes. So if we look at this term, I hope that I'm going to say this right. It's accurization. It's the process of adjusting to a new or non-native culture. And involved within that process, there are sub-processes, including self-esteem development, self-concept formation, social identity development, and ethnic identify formation. So over there, they talk about the U curve. So I put a visual in here for you. So the U curve is... essentially, it is a 4-phase process, and it's a hypothesis that these CLD students experience. So the sense of self is shaped by the psychosocial processes of the sociocultural dimension. So when we look at this process on the U curve, the students start in the honeymoon phase. So that's when they first get here. There's an experience or a sense of just this altered happiness. So then they start to move down towards the U part of the curve, and they get to the part where they feel hostile. So they're impatient, they have anxiety, frustration, even anger. They move around the curve and they start to adjust. We see the sense of humor coming into play. And then at last, at the very end point of the U curve, is when they start to feel at home. Hi everyone.